Welcome, everyone. We are here in beautiful Long Prairie, Minnesota again at Countryside Restaurant. And we're joined with a crew today. So to my right, Drew Peterson. To my left, Anthony Pappenfuss. And this is Pints and Politics. And our fan base in the back here.
Yeah, we got a live show for you today.
Let them hear ya.
So we just got done with the endorsing convention, and we have some people that are joining us, and maybe have a few questions as well. But
Yeah, you had quite the nail biter there.
it was close.
Yeah.
We didn't know until the numbers came in, but I was successful. No, and we're kind of joking, of course. It was an unchallenged endorsement. Myself and Krista Knudsen both received the endorsement for 5A and 5B. So very proud of that, and very, very blessed to be in the area that we are and to have the good people that we are, and look forward to serving the people in this area once again. Another true.
Yep, absolutely. It was it ran really smooth today, which was good. I was a little nervous about that. Um, you asked me to nominate you, which I did, and you asked me to write a speech. I didn't even have to give the speech, so thanks for the pressure, Mike. Appreciate it.
It made me sound pretty good. I was happy with
Yeah, ladies and everyone, Mike Weiner,
that.
man who needs no introduction.
But no, I'd like to talk a little bit about that endorsement. So if you've watched us before, Anthony was a candidate
Yep.
in 14B, Anthony P for 14B, and was unsuccessful. But he went through the endorsement process, and it's a very learning experience, isn't it? So you kind of get your feet wet to politics a little bit, some of the political machinations. When you saw this convention today, what's your thoughts?
I really enjoyed it. I liked that so many people were participating. I thought that in St. Cloud, particular, we had a very low, unimpressive turnout, which there are reasons for that, but
Yeah, and that's a little bit disappointing. You would think in a city like St. Cloud there'd be a bigger turnout, but I don't remember the exact numbers. But we had somebody remind me, how many delegates did we have there today?
We had about, I think we had 102 between, 102 between 5A and 5B.
Okay,
5A had 48 and 5B had 52.
and that's really good.
Actually, my math's off. It goes up to 102. It's like 54 for 5B and 48 for 5A. That makes sense.
And for 5A, all of those delegates had to drive from the northern part of this district. So not most of them, a lot of them drove at least an hour, in some cases, probably close to 2 hours. Really shows the dedication of the delegates in our area, the involvement in politics, and not to pick on St. Cloud a little bit, but I'm going to, when that endorsement convention is right there and all of those delegates are within 20 minutes across town, to have that low of a turnout, we need to do better. We need to engage the voters, we need to engage the delegates better and get higher turnout in those areas. So I'm proud of the people that showed up here today, and it speaks a lot for our area. It really does.
And the important thing about why we do these endorsing conventions is to give the people of the district, the constituents, their voice to choose who they want to represent them. And
Exactly.
that's the big deal behind it. Like, we've been pushing it all year because of how important it is.
Right. And when we sit on the floor of the house, up on the wall, it says VOX populum est VOX Dei. The voice of the people is the voice of God. So when those delegates give that stamp of approval, it's written right there on the wall. It's something for us all to look to. And there's other words up there too, and frugality. We don't use that in politics nearly as much as we need to. When you see that $19.5 billion surplus squandered and another $10 billion of revenue raisers, I think we should take frugality off the wall and lower it so that we can focus on it when we're discussing bills.
get a copy
Taxes.
of it and put it in every representative's
should.
doorstep.
We should start every speech with frugality. No, but we were talking about the endorsement and how critical that is. The endorsed candidate in an area, most areas like mine, will win 90% of the time. It's a huge deal to be the endorsed candidate. And that's why politicians look for that endorsement so much. It shows how valuable it is. And then we've discussed this a little bit too, where it's a marketing thing. So if you're going to bring a product to marketing, generally what you do is you bring in a test group, right? 10 people, you just try this, whatever the product is, if it's this glass of water. And if 6 out of 10 of those people like that product, that means you got 60%, which is exactly what the endorsement process looks for. They look for that 60% because that candidate is a marketable candidate. And that's what that's kind of based on. So there's a logic to it. There's a logic to those numbers. And it's kind of interesting. The problem that I keep running into or that we have is when we get those endorsed candidates challenged. And I've talked a lot about primaries and how primaries absolutely kill us. We cannot afford primaries because every dollar we spend fighting amongst ourselves is a dollar we're not using to win elections against Democrats.
And then at the end of the day, that's what the whole thing is about. It's about winning against the Democrat. Because the party is meant to be united.
I particularly think it's interesting that we spend more time and effort to challenging other Republicans in safe seats, whereas we have whole Democrat seats that are completely unchallenged. There's nobody there running.
That's right.
We'll
And-
find somebody. We'll dig out somebody somewhere to run against another Republican.
It kind of shows how the Democrats operate because when you see them at the federal level, they're all marching together. They're all taking their orders from the same people. It's like almost like in lockstep, I believe the term is. And in the Republican Party, just like with McCarthy and with Jim Jones, there's infighting. There is an actual movement challenging the established people in politics.
Well,
And so when we get these endorsements, that's part of, again, why it's important. So that gives the grassroots or the people the ability to decide whether they want the more establishment types or they want somebody more populist.
well, and I think sometimes in our own party, what we do is, we can have these disagreements.
Yeah.
We can have discussions and we can get heated on those. But at the end of the day, we have to understand what the bigger picture is. And instead, we let our emotions sometimes take control, or we let those animosities carry over, which is really unproductive. And it doesn't bode well for any group to have that infighting. I kind of picked on the Democrats recently on a speech. They're promoting DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? That's the hallmark that they keep talking about. But there's something much more powerful than diversity, and that's unity. What made our country great is when we pulled together the great expansion out into the West. It was like, go West, young man. And the growth of this country, because they were all looking towards a bigger picture, something larger than themselves. Then you had the world wars, World War I, World War II. It pulled the country together. And there was division, don't get me wrong. But even Kennedy, what did Kennedy do? He said, we're going to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade. And it was something that unified the people. And as Republicans, all too often, we're more diverse than the Democrats, but we're not unified. And I think we really need to work on that.
Yeah, amen, amen. And the thing, what you were talking about was purpose. We need a purpose to strive for. And like Anthony, you're the youngest guy here. Can you tell us what, like someone with our generation, because we're about the same age, how important we would need purpose in? Because I think we have a lack of purpose and it shows.
Yeah, I think that every generation has had kind of like a defining myth, and that's kind of been underneath the umbrella of the United States. And for the first time, you have, it really started with the millennials, but it was kind of like just a complete sabotage of the unifying myth and the idea of, what's your purpose in life. And so now you have a whole generation of people that are kind of, they're just wandering through life and they don't really have any direction or purpose. They're not really unified with other people. And, you have a DEI, for example, is deliberately built to destroy communities, to destroy those unifying bonds. It's a criticism and an attack on the country as a whole. And I don't want to put my tinfoil hat, but it's probably deliberate to some degree.
Well, it is because DEI is policy. It is it's platform policy on the DNC. We see it in companies, and I'll take Boeing for example, because the plane builders, right? Yeah, and they had an issue recently with a bunch of diversity hires of planes falling apart in the sky. It's not based on merit. It's not what you can do. It's what you look like.
So isn't that the antithesis of Martin Luther King?
Yeah,
I mean, we were told by Martin Luther King, and I believe it. I believe it was a sound thing, where we want to judge a man based on the content of his character, not the color of his skin. And now here we're saying that the only thing that's important is the color of your skin. But it is so wrong because we're dividing people. But now you talk about the tinfoil hat, and I believe there are forces that are very much trying to tear us apart. And I refer back to that book once in a while, Unrestricted Warfare.
Okay.
And Sun Tzu. I stole my daughter's copy of Sun Tzu. It's down in my office. But Unrestricted Warfare is a book that it was Chinese generals who looked at the war in Iraq, the first Gulf War, and they said that they cannot militarily beat the United States. So what do? They said we need to use basically Sun Tzu's Art of War modernized in order to take over the United States. So that book lays out kind of a game plan. It says you attack the universities, you attack the family, you use pharmaceuticals, you use all of these other things to take down your opponent. Now, if those Chinese generals laid this out 20 years ago and we're not paying attention to it, it's to our detriment. So some of these things that are tearing us apart, and then to know that the Marxist, socialist aspects of the Democrat Party are in favor of that stuff. Yes, I do believe they're trying to tear us apart. Look at the Cultural Revolution that happened in China in the 60s and 70s.
Mao Zedong.
With Mao, exactly. You had to tear apart a society to rebuild it in the new man.
Yeah, and they also destroyed the family unit.
Absolutely.
It was the destruction of the four old culture, old family,
Exactly.
old
Or
religion and
olds.
such.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
and you can look at, for example, the Soviets. They couldn't compete with Hollywood. So what did they do? They subverted Hollywood. They actively promote you. How many movies do you see where you have blatant left-wing agendas being pushed in these
Oh,
movies?
these days,
For sure.
everything out of Hollywood, pretty much.
Yeah,
Right.
and that's a shame because I think that the conservatives have made it a big flaw where they just assume that you turn 30 years old and you just become a conservative. Like, poof, you're a
Yeah.
conservative now.
That's lazy politics.
Whereas you had John Wayne in the 70s promoting Americana. You had in the 80s you had Arnold Schwarzenegger shooting up stuff, and you had the flag behind him and Chuck Norris and
Yeah.
everything. There's no kind of America heck yeah in entertainment nowadays. And so you have a lot of kids who are they all they hear is a message, a Democrat message, just consistently throughout their entire life.
So I just want to make sure that if the crowd has any questions at any time, let us know.
Oh, yeah.
We'll-
Yeah, we have a live show. We can do questions today. That'll be
Yeah, we
fun.
can do
Oh,
questions.
we got a question.
See, I knew it was
Oh,
happening.
snap.
Instantly, we got a hand up. What's the question?
How do you change the mindset of people today that with socialism, that they just want to be taken care of? They don't care if they own anything, they don't care if they have anything, just take care of me.
So in case the audio
Yeah.
didn't come through, it was how do you change the mindset about socialism and this slide towards socialism that we're going through? That they just want to be taken care of.
Boot camp.
Um, well,
Just camping in general.
I don't think human nature changes. There is a percentage of the population that appeals to, and I think it always has. And we've seen examples of that. If you look at the start of our own United States here, the colonies actually used a form of socialism
Jamestown
didn't
called.
work.
I know what you're talking. Yeah, Jamestown did it.
Exactly. It
And
did not work.
yep, John Smith's famous quote: "He who does not work does not eat."
Straight
There
from
you
the
go.
Bible.
So one of the things that we're seeing in the mindset that has to change is, part of the problem or aspect of the problem is that we have been a wealthy nation for a long time. We have had plenty. This is the land of milk and honey, good and getting biblical. We've had it too good for too long. So a challenge, and we try to do this on a regular basis where we try to take away any obstacles and say we're going to do better for our kids and we're not going to have these challenges or whatever. That's to the detriment of the advancement of a personal being. Challenge, it builds us to what we are.
Yep, the term
You know?
in sports is steel sharpens steel. So you build yourself better. You have to challenge yourself and you have to overcome the challenges. So part of my answer I want to butt in here is
Absolutely.
when we were talking about how they just want to be taken care of, this is in a way, this is almost a domestication issue. Because if you raise a dog, that dog is dependent on you. That dog will come running when you call because you feed him. You throw that dog into the wild after raising him for 5 years, he's not going to know what to do. He's going to die of starvation because he doesn't have the ability to find food, to feed himself, to even find shelter. So in a way, it's almost a domestication because if the people rely on you for everything, they're going to do what you tell them to do because you're the one who feeds them, houses them, shelters them, gives them water, gives them their drugs.
So going into a mammalian comparison, don't they have signs in Yellowstone that says do not feed the animals?
Yep.
Because the animals will become dependent
Yep.
on the handouts.
Yep, and moose will attack you. Fun fact.
So some of the mindset has to change. Instead of giving handouts, we need to give a hand up. I mean, I do believe that we should be charitable, but when the government takes money to give to another, that's not charity. Okay? That is theft. That's not even forced compassion. We've taken so much from the people and from institutions that used to supply that hand up. The churches and so forth used to be a source for when people needed extra help, and we've turned that into a role of government, and that shouldn't be.
Well,
If you let people keep more of their money and they can choose to be compassionate with, I think they will actually be more compassionate than what we see now. So we've got to show that money in the people's pockets is better than money in the hands of government.
Anthony, you want to weigh in on the question? The
Yeah,
question, of course, again being, how do we change the mindset of socialism?
well, I think that there's two types of people. There's, people are ideologically programmed to think like that. Some people possess ideas and some people are possessed by their ideas.
That's a good quote.
I
That's an
think-
interesting thought.
Somebody's got to write this down.
Yeah.
We got a crayon or something.
So,
Put my trademark on that one.
Yeah.
That's mine. Anthony Pat. Some people possess ideas and some people are possessed by their ideas.
so what does that mean?
Well, if you just possess
Philosophically.
ideas,
Yeah.
and you attack those ideas, then you're just attacking the idea. But when you are possessed by those ideas and you attack that idea, you're attacking that person. So
That's why when you question DEI, they immediately call you racist because they're possessed by the idea.
Now it's a personal attack. It's not a tool that somebody has. If somebody's using a hammer and it's like, a 3-ounce hammer, you're like,
Yeah.
hey man, get a 10-ounce hammer and hit that sucker. Then okay, well that. But if it's like a character, an attack on your nose or your hair or something like that, then
Yeah.
it's internalized at that point. That's some degree. So you have this ideological aspect to it, and then you have just a cynical. If you're a kid who you're $40,000 in debt, you're renting, you're working at Starbucks, and you have two people who are giving you options, and one just says work longer hours at Starbucks and become a manager, you'll move up, and the other one says, well, vote for me and I'll give you heaven and the earth. At that point you're like, well, who am I going to vote for?
So another aspect to this, and I'm just thinking about what you're talking because I'm two young guys on each side of me. What opportunities, and I talked about it a little bit today, are young people having? It was the American dream to own a home. But those opportunities are being squandered right now because government taking more and more of the money. So young people are starting to look at it and say, what are we going to do here? You're taking everything. They can't even afford the education that they just went through. Well, guess what? And I love using Paul Harvey's, referencing him. I talk about it all the time. Freedom to Change. Listen to it. Look it up on YouTube. I think it's great because it's historic examples of how societies have gone. And there's an ebb and flow in human nature. So kind of like an addiction, you have to hit rock bottom to realize that you have to change your ways. And are we at that point in our country where we're saying we're squandering our kids' future? You hear a lot more of it now than you did before. And I think the young people are starting to see this and going, we want something else. Socialism is not the answer. Free capitalism, real capitalism is a much better option. So,
Do we have any other questions from the audience?
yeah, did we get our orders in?
No.
No, we didn't.
A lot of food.
Yeah, they're out of food.
They're out of food.
You got another one?
Well, yeah, I just.
Got any questions? Yeah.
Point is, we're actually a republic and everybody keeps calling off.
Oh, yeah. So to iterate, we got a guy in the back make a point of entrance saying that we're a republic, but everyone keeps calling us a democracy.
We're referred to as democracy.
They're destroying the republic, not the
Is
democracy.
it that scene
It-
from A Season for All Men where we're a nation of laws, not of men, or something like that?
And here's my response to that. I know I've gotten flack a couple of times for engaging in that same rhetoric. Is that when you look at a democracy, it's the people vote. In a pure democracy, like the Athenian democracy, everyone would get together at the hill that they would all vote at, and then everyone voted on every issue. When we look at Rome, the Republic of Rome, people would elect their representatives who would then vote. So you just have tiered democracy. So I look at democracy as an umbrella, and a republic, which is our government, you're correct, is under the democratic umbrella. So we have a democratic style of government, but we have something far superior than a straight democracy.
I've always defined a republic as the republic is the public thing. It's the law. It's the rule of law is the highest value in the republic, whereas a democracy is just it's the people.
It's mob rule.
It's mob rule. If you got 51% of the votes, then it passes. Whereas in a republic, it's hey now what was it put? It was if you got a posse and you went out to go hang a man,
Yeah,
and you had a majority there to hang the man. No, that guy's got rights.
that's
He
yep.
needs to be judged by a group of his peers.
And that's where the idea of a constitution comes into play. Because whenever they call us a constitutional republic, it's kind of redundant because the Constitution just basically explains how the government operates, what they can and cannot do to the citizens. Anything to add, Mike?
I am just impressed
Very good.
with the knowledge that we have here. And it gives me a lot of hope for those future generations that, we haven't screwed things up too bad. When you have young people like this that are talking about the things that they're talking about, it's impressive. Good job, guys. Thomas Jefferson's thing was exactly what you said. Democracy is nothing more than mob rule, right? And as to the question about Democrat versus or democracy versus republic, I think was it Ben Franklin when he came out of the
A
hall.
republic, ma'am, if you can keep it.
That's right. What
Yeah.
kind of government do we have? And he said, it's a republic, ma'am, if you can keep it. And we have changed that. And I believe that was strategic. And you started seeing that back in the 60s where they changed that word. We are a democracy. We're going to spread democracy. We were never a democracy. We were always a republic. Say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I think that
We don't say unto the democracy for which it stands.
Benjamin Franklin's speech that he gave at the Constitutional Convention was also quite inspiring. He said that as long as we have a moral and decent people, this form of government will continue. But if the people would become so corrupt that they would ever need a despot or dictator, then that would be a sad day for this country. And he also spoke about at the Constitutional Convention, most people there were under the age of 35 to some degree, like a third of them were under the age of 35. You had Alexander Hamilton and James Madison But he also spoke about how happy he was to see younger people in politics and to see this experimental form of government that, although he had reservations for, he was very hopeful about.
Our majority of forefathers were in their twenties and late teens.
Sure.
Jackson's actually 33, he was one of the others, but the majority of them are under age 45.
Alexander Hamilton was 21 when he signed off on the Declaration of Independence.
So to reiterate, most of our founding fathers were under the age of 30, just so everybody knows.
Everybody knows that.
No, most people don't. Most people don't know that.
To be fair,
because-
the portraits were when they were older, so
That's
it-
fair.
It does make them.
Well, that's how long it took to paint the portrait.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
The Polaroids were a lot slower.
Yeah. Well, they had pictures, but it would take 3 months to take the picture and another 6 to develop it.
But, and I think that exemplifies a little bit to our education. If you read what those men had, written as far as the Declaration of Independence and their writings all together, and we say that somehow we're smarter now, I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
I don't believe
Our
that.
education system's lost its mojo thanks to all the government's running the education for them.
We had read,
So to reiterate, the education system. Can you reiterate his statement for us, please?
education, the flaws in the education system, and it's not what it used to or what it could be. The potential, I mean, you can still, education is what we make of it. We're not doing a good enough job.
It used to be as a good thing. Walter Williams and Thomas Sowell both pointed this out. You know, they grew up in the Bronx and Harlem and such, and most of the kids who were in those ghettos and went to those ghetto schools moved out and became lawyers and doctors and such in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. But now most of the kids that go through those schools
They
have
stay
no
there.
future. Yeah, they stay in the same places that.
Well, and nowadays we look at homeschooling and people question it and say, you know, is this a good thing? That's what was education for basically thousands of years. And we went to this education model, which I'm sure many people don't understand, but it was based on the Prussian military education system to form soldiers.
I thought ours was based on Rockefeller.
No, it
Well,
started with
they
Prussia,
both, yeah,
right?
Rockefeller. brought it in.
Rockefeller and Ford both liked the idea because it acclimated people coming from the agrarian or out in the country to a factory life, because this was about the time of the Industrial Revolution. Put people in rows, get them to respond to a bell. You gotta move back in, you're off the
Yeah,
camera.
he's trying to hide from you guys.
I'm like, my neck is doing the whole exorcist thing
Yeah.
here.
He's trying
But
to.
no, that education system, it was set up, and now read something that John Dewey is remember the Dewey Decimal card?
Yep.
Before you had your computer, you'd look up stuff. Read some of the things that John Dewey said about education and how it really wasn't meant to educate, but meant to train people. So it's amazing, and this is the father of modern education. Interesting. Look up
That's-
what they say, because look up Dewey, look up Ford, some of his things. Margaret Sanger with Planned
Yeah,
Parenthood.
yeah,
where we
Margaret
started
Sanger,
with
that
her now.
eugenicist, yeah.
It is absolutely amazing.
One of the
How long we've been on?
We've been going. I'm gonna open the floor up to one more question and then we're gonna have to call her.
Okay,
Got one more question? Anyone?
anything else?
Bueller?
throw something out.
Bueller?
Wonderful weather we're having here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
No, United States been known for was you asked before, what the United States is, you know, it's the American dream. What's the American dream? What is the American dream? I always tell people it's a lack of opportunity. You have opportunity, you do not have to stay down here. You can work your way up. But in the Obama administration, when they started bringing the wealth down, that scared me because I thought, oh man, there goes the opportunities. Not that
So-
the wealthy run everything, but the wealthy in the right direction is not a good thing.
So to paraphrase,
Yeah.
America is the land of opportunity. And, you know, the attacks on that, the class warfare, we talked about communism and socialism before. That's a huge part of that socialism and communism as class warfare, pitting people against each other. It's also the racist aspect of it, is to get people fighting amongst themselves and then introduce a new man.
Yep.
So, yeah, we've gone a little bit long here today. It's been a good talk, good
It
discussion.
has been. It's always a pleasure talking to you, Anthony.
Good to have Anthony here. Good to have Drew here. Great crowd of people.
First time doing a live show.
Yeah, and nothing was thrown at us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's okay. I was good at dodgeball. But
this is good.
anyway,
So, yep,
thank
this
you
is-
guys so much for watching. Drew, Mike, Anthony, Pints and Politics. God bless.
Godspeed, gentlemen.